If you're tired of always soloing from box 1 of the minor pentatonic, trust me, you're not alone. So many people I know are stuck using that box and its same old licks. Today I've got a great soloing hack to show you, one that I learned from one of my favorite solos and a Jimmy Page favorite too. It's totally simple, you can learn it in just a few minutes and it'll give you a completely different sound. I don't know if you're like me and so many of my students who are bored of the same old pentatonic licks. You know the ones, like this one. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's what I grew up on and it still sounds great. But there are things that sound different too, like this phenomenal intro solo, I'm sure you know. Yep, Jimmy Page's favorite, but here's where the really interesting part comes in. Believe it or not, there's a really simple technique that Elliott Randall, the guitarist who played that for Steely Dan, used there. And you can learn it very quickly too. Not just to learn Elliott's solo note for note, but to get a totally new sound in your playing. Plus, you can use it in all sorts of places. Standard blues, bluesy rock songs, one-chord vamps. Let me show you how easy it is to add this into your bag of tricks. We're going to do this in A. But before I get into this, yes, there's a bunch of theory that everybody teaches, but I'm not going to get into all of that because you don't need to know it to use this technique effectively. Now, if we're going to play, say, a blues in A, starting with this chord, an A7, that key sound of blues and rock, the dominant 7th chord, we know that we can use the pentatonic box 1. But that just leads us to where we were, and we want to break out of that. So instead, let's look at that A7 chord. It has the standard notes of an A chord, but it's also got this G in there. And that's one of the notes that really gives the blues its bluesy sound. Now, we could play arpeggios for that A7 chord. And learn them all over the neck. But while it would sound different, that's kind of difficult and takes some time. What I'm going to show you is far simpler than that. So what if instead of using A7, we used a simple A chord? That's easy. And for today, let's make it even easier and just play the D, G, and B strings. Super easy. The only problem, it's missing that G. But what if we momentarily went to a G chord and played that and then came back? Voila, we added our bluesy G. You see what I mean? It's a really easy concept. You just take that A chord, and you move it down 2 frets. You keep the same shape and everything. And it doesn't matter where you play the A chord, or what shape you use, you just take that shape, move it down 2 frets, and you get a G, and you can play that. Now, that's called a triad pair, but the real question is, how do you use it in soloing, and how does it make your sound different? So let's take a look at that. So how is this going to be different? Well, when we take a scale, let's say the minor pentatonic, see how it's one note after the other. Very predictable, and it doesn't matter what scale we use. If we use, say, the A mixolydian, it's also going to sound kind of predictable and one-directional. But watch what happens when I play a lick that's using these triad pairs. It sounds very different, doesn't it? So I'm sure you already see how that's going to make your sound a lot different than it would using a scale like the minor pentatonic or even learning a new scale. But We still need to learn how to use these triad pairs to make music. And when we do, there's another huge hidden advantage. It's going to make moving all over the fretboard so much easier. So let's take a look at that now. To make your life easier, I've provided a free triad roadmap. You can get it by clicking the link that's in the video description below. All right, let's take a look at that simple lick that I played so we can maybe generalize on how we do this before we do anything more complicated and cool. So I just played this lick right here. That's just playing the notes of that A chord, slid down to this G and played it in reverse order. And that's just to make it a little more musical. You don't have to do that. And then I did something that's very important. I came back to the A and I resolved. I played a note in that A chord. Now I didn't have to resolve on that A note. I could have resolved on any of these chord tones like this. That sounds good. Or I could have resolved on that was on the C sharp. I could have resolved on this E. So far, we just used these two chord shapes. And we went A to G, back to A. But what if instead of this G, we went to a different G? Let's say we went to this G, which is based on the C chord, or the C-shaped chord, with the root of G there. What if we went to this G? That would be interesting too. And if we can do that, we probably could go to the next A as well. So, you see where I'm going here? And if we did that, we could go to the next G and the next A. That's an A shape. An A-shaped G and an A-shaped A. And if we did that, we could go to this G, which is the same as we had before, and this A. And in fact, that's it. Those are the three shapes. So we come up with lines that are really pretty interesting. But we can always resolve on that A. So you see, you can use it like a highway, getting up and down the neck with total ease once you're comfortable doing this. And again, remember, there's only three shapes. But that's not usually how it's used as just playing those triad licks. There's another key that we can do to make it sound much cooler and much more musical. So let's check that out now. One way that you can use this in a rock or a blues setting is to start a little bit edgier, start in a pentatonic lick, and then when you're ready to move up the fretboard, use this triad pair concept, and then when you get where you're going, end it by using a pentatonic lick. Let me show you what I'm talking about. But triads can be even more useful than that. For example, check out this video in which George Harrison used triads to create one of his greatest solos and most well-known solos. So check out this video. I'll see you in that video, and I'll see you on down the road.